All right, welcome back. Hopefully you found yourself a new beverage. Um, so that was a great introduction into what we're going to be moving on to next, which is talking about our user agreement and some of the changes that we've been kind of having some internal discussions about, and want to get some of your feedback on it. But Matt can take us away with that discussion.
Great, thanks, Kim. So yeah, so we had a bit of a preamble to this discussion at the June meeting and wanted to kind of give you an update. Um, my original hope had been that we would move forward with these updates in the fall, but there has been a lot going on related to Davit and RWSC and other things that have kind of had us decide to wait until this meeting to really try to move these forwards so that we had a better sense of what the landscape would be and how we might best move forward. So one of the key things that we've done is that the language for the original user agreement and for our current user agreement has been very dated, and a lot has happened with our network and other regional networks since then. And so we've done a lot of what I'll call sort of cosmetic changes to update the information on in the user agreement to be current and also to match our other network documents and websites and other things. So we've been doing a lot of work to try to make the language consistent across all of those. We've also joined forces with Miracus since it was written. So we've added that information in. We've added our strong recommendation to upload both your tag and receiver spec sheets, which really helps Kim be able to work with you to make sure your data are as accurate as possible and your metadata are as accurate as possible, and that we have fewer changes to make once your projects and data get uploaded. And then we've added a mention of some of the other kinds of data streams that come in either with your tag data or your receiver data, things like temperature from acoustic release receivers. And currently, those data sort of come into our database. We don't do much with them yet. There's opportunities for that I will touch on in just a minute, but we wanted to incorporate that information in here. So there's sort of a set of changes throughout the whole document to do these things, and then we've tried to make it look a little bit prettier and more organized as well. So we're kind of finishing that stuff up, hopefully this week with a few kind of final tweaks and formatting and things. But that portion of what I want to talk about is mostly done and not really the point of the discussion. But so soon we will have a new user agreement that looks nice and pretty like this. This is sort of the beginning of it. And it's the changes are enough that instead of well, we changed it to being version 2.1 instead of 1.3 or whatever, 4, whatever we were on. So, we've heard a lot about the sort of new opportunities that we currently have and some of the upcoming opportunities as a network. And I think the bigger discussions that we've had about the user agreement are related to some of these things. So a lot of you have agreed to participate in the Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative Planning Map that Jordan was talking about. We have some projects that are completely public, which you as a project owner have the ability to set within the Matos data portal. Public projects, and we've tried to clarify the language on it a little bit in the user agreement, but public projects are that. The intention is that that information is public. There's your contact information and other things. So if the projects that are in the network that are public, The receiver locations are in that map, and then many other people responded to an email that was sent out to have their detection or their receiver locations added to that map as well. So that's been a nice new opportunity. We have a couple of data sets, as John was talking about, that are now published to OBIS. Nathan Fury has at least one in there, a couple in there, I think. My group has them in there, so that's something that is possible. There are some receiver location challenges to that we'll talk about in a minute. And then, as John was also talking about, there is a process that we're setting up and have in place to develop and test this pipeline to archive full data sets in CEI. So that's something that's moving forward and that we're working on that will be an upcoming opportunity. And some of that also depends on conversations that we'll have about sharing receiver locations. Joy just gave an excellent overview of Davit and all of the great things that it could potentially be. So that's an opportunity here. And then, as I mentioned, there are these environmental data that we're collecting that could be useful for a variety of different things. And so one of the potential opportunities that I see there is providing things like the bottom temperature data from acoustic release receivers to be available to people in Maricouse or near Acoustic through their data portals. With Maricouse, they could potentially be displayed and available on the oceans map, for example. We haven't done that yet, but the opportunity is there to do it, and I think the data would be really useful to people, to a lot of different people, both within the telemetry community and outside it. So there's a lot of opportunities to leverage those data and make them available to people if you're interested in doing that with your project. So that's a pipeline that we would need to build, but I think is relatively straightforward. And Joy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Sakura is ingesting a lot of that data from the FACT network, and we have the potential to do that as well. So for most of this discussion, that I think we heard from both John and Joy about what some of the opportunities are. There's are a couple of different options of ways to implement that, and John has the best knowledge of the ins and outs of that, and can contribute that here. But I think for both of the opportunities related to visualizing animal data through the Davit and receiver location data or publishing data to OBIS and NCEI, there are some things that we could do to enable that to either be a relatively straightforward, efficient, easy process, or it could be a very customized, painful, time-intensive process. But as a network, we need to decide how we want to move forward with those things. And these are sort of the big questions that have really been underlying why we've been holding the update to the user agreement, because we want to see what direction the network wants to go on these so that we can include that relevant information in the user agreement. Thought we could start by talking about Davit a little bit. And one of the key pieces for the Davit is that it obviously requires species level information. FACT gets that information in their detection extracts. We don't currently have that included in our detection extracts, but that's one of the things that's needed, and there are potential options for how to do that. And I think that brings us to the question in the chat, which I'm trying to recover for myself here, which was, let's see, was what the options are for ACT members to upload their data or include their data in the Davit. And I know John responded, but John, do you want to jump on and share your response verbally? and sort of what
Sure.
our options
Yeah.
are as a network for Davit?
Sure. So it's possible to do this because the data underlying the Davit is the detection extract from the tag owner. So what FACT did was collect permissions from all of the projects that had tags, and the data that you get as a detection extract, as a data report, that's the data that is feeding the Davit. So it is probably okay to include data in the Davit on an opt-in basis if that is required, if that's the best we can do, because the users will be giving their receiver, or they're not the receiver, their detection data directly in order to feed the Davit processing pipeline. So yeah, you can opt in. You could, as ACT, decide that folks should instead opt out if that's the thing you're interested in doing. I don't have much beyond the technical for this tool, so I feel like I'm talking out of turn a little bit. So I'll cede the floor.
So we've discussed this
Yep.
a little bit in work, like what the workflow could look like. You know, absolutely what John said is that this is based on the detection extract level. And then we're running kind of like an extra thing on doing the flags for it. So even though the document management systems for FACT and ACT are different, we use Research Workspace, you have Matos kind of running in the background. It would not be hard if people wanted to opt in to create that workflow where we can pull from that. I imagine, and you know, there could be stipulations to it where if you want it known that you know, the information is coming from an ACT-based project, you know, that's just one more column, one more thing that we could add to the metadata that's associated with that. I'll say how those images are created is they are static. So they're brought in, an image is created. So say like density by month, by species, by project, whatever. Those are static. So it's not like it's pulling all the time. So it would probably be timed for something like after pushes, when the Davit is updated. If that workflow, you know, is there and people opt in and wanted to do it, the information would be pulled at that time. So it's not like it's constantly having to tap into these detection extracts.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions about the Davit? While we have the experts on the call. Okay. Great. So the other sort of big discussion point for you know, for facilitating some of the opportunities that we have in as efficient a way as possible is what to do about receiver locations. So in our current user agreement, the network has the ability to use those locations at sort of a very zoomed out level to create maps like our, you know, overview maps of receiver deployments or things like that that are on the ACT website, but not, you know, not to share those receiver locations for things like OBIS. So I'm sure, you know, Nathan can speak to this a little bit for data sets that are getting published to OBIS or, you know, potentially in the future to NCEI. Our current process has been for those researchers to reach out and get permission for the receiver locations that are in their data sets, which, yeah, it's kind of okay for one small project. The ones that my lab has uploaded to OBIS are ones where the animals stayed completely within our local receiver array, were not detected on anyone else's receivers, and so that was very easy for us to deal with. So the much more efficient way to do this would be, yeah, so John says others have more than 10 external projects contributing receiver, you know, data where tags are detected on receivers and have to go out and get permissions. And that's, you know, gets to be a really long, extensive process. You know, so one of the much more efficient ways to do this would be if we as a network decide that we're okay with sharing receiver locations for data products like this, to some reduced level of, well, either full resolution or more likely to some reduced level of resolution, like 2 decimal degrees. And John, I didn't know if you might want to comment on what that process looks like a little bit. It's whether it's an opt-in or opt-out process is a little bit less easy than it is for the Davit. So if you wanted to comment a bit more on that, that could be helpful.
Sure. And again, this is just a technical perspective.
Mhm.
There are 2 kind of classes of receiver contributor when we build the OBIS archive. We look to see if the project is sharing its data about receiver locations completely. So if it's OTN, if it's PATH, if it's NPACT, those are all completely shared. And if it's RAFT, so those would all be completely shared. But if it's one of the networks that doesn't share receiver locations, but has agreed to do 2 decimal places, that's a second pipeline that we can put just those projects through. Within a node or within a network, you can have projects that are designated, hey, please publish all my data specifically. And that means that we could use their data at full resolution to publish the OBIS archive. If you are the tagging project that we're publishing, so like Nathan's own receivers, those are going to go in as full resolution because they're receivers in service of that project that we're publishing right now. But if you're contributing from outside of that project and you're in a network like FACT, you would get 2 decimal places would be the closest you get for receiver location, since your network doesn't publish those right now. Even with FACT and with ACT, we have to go and seek permission explicitly from each contributor right now to say, hey, your data is going to be part of this archive that we would like to publish. You know, this is the person who's trying to publish it. This is the data we're talking about. Is this okay? We've never gotten a no when we've sent around these emails, but it is a problem that doesn't scale for the same reason that we built database nodes in the first place. We can't email 20 people every time we want to update a data archive, because what happens is we say yes, and then 2 new people come on, are adding to that next time we have a data push. There's 2 new projects. So we have to go get those projects before we have permission to publish the data set we already published again. So if there is a way to say as a network, we're okay with this 2 decimal place inclusion in the OBIS archive, that means we can move forward rather quickly and get everybody published that wants to be published. If we do something else and it has a whole lot of clerical work for some very busy people, it will slow our ability to serve these public data sets.
Great, thanks, John. So, I think from my perspective, I would love to see the network move in a direction where we're agreeable with sharing receiver locations up to 2 decimal places. But I, would want that to be a decision by the network to do that, not something that comes down from the top. So I'm curious if people want to share their thoughts about that, or Nathan, if you want to share your experience publishing to OBIS. Yeah, we've got a few minutes here that we can answer questions about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in, Matt. Let me first say that really folks like Kim and John and others like Matt Biddle kind of made it easy on me. I didn't have to do a lot of manual stuff, but that was one small project. They literally, they can't do that across all of these projects and try to do that in an effective manner at all. So, I mean, I'm completely supportive of being this required of receiver locations to at least 2 decimal places. I mean, I don't, again, that's helpful for beyond just getting to OBIS and NCEI, just even trying to coordinate among research projects and seeing what infrastructure is out there and try to develop new collaborations. I have a hard time seeing how that could really dramatically affect somebody's research program when we're talking about receiver locations relative to, let's say, animal data or whatnot that they're involved in other conversations. So I'll just put it out there. I am 100% supportive of requiring this in the new data user agreement.
Yes, Mike.
I think that it would make problems to straight require it, considering that kind of the back end of what the agreement is, what it was, and kind of what people were when they put the data into this database was kind of founded on different principles. So if you switch that and say, okay, we're automatically gonna have you mandate you to opt in to this, then that there's going to be a shift. So I think, sorry, I think optimally, I think the opt in or opt out, I think would be necessary rather than just forcing it upon people, just because those who've already joined the network joined under a different agreement with different purposes. So changing the kind of underlying philosophy, which I think would be a good change, to just say, yes, we're going to do this would be hard just because the underlying philosophy before was, no, we're not going to do any of this type of thing. So just kind of comment on that. So I think that having an opt in or opt out option would be critical as opposed to just this is what we're doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Can I chime back in, Matt? Sorry.
Mhm.
I typed it, but I realized I should say it too. There are people in their cars, but we did a data policy change at OTN in 2024. We went from an opt out embargo to an opt-in embargo for people who needed embargoes for their data. And in order to execute that, we did, as Mike is alluding to, we had to track who has agreed to be governed by the new data policy. And so as part of rolling out changes to a user agreement, sometimes you do have to just check in with the people who are already on board to make sure they're on board with the new thing. I can offer advice on how to do that. I would say the overhead of that is less of a headache than the overhead of trying to publish a data set and require explicit permissions every time. So my take is that it's less trouble to move people to a new version of the user agreement than it is to continually have to ask permissions for individual data set publishing.
Yeah. Beth.
I think a couple of important sort of bring it home things that we're missing here is that it's not just an arduous process for the OTN to do this or the data managers, right? All of this costs money. And so as we continue to grow exponentially, as you saw in the charts, things that slow down the process or make the process less efficient are going to continue to cost more and more man hours, which costs more and more money, right? And so that's something we need to keep in the back of our minds too, is this isn't just a, we don't want to do the extra work situation. This is, we can't continuously strain money from the funding that's brought in, through the regional IS associations and the ATN.
And I think even to add on to that, Beth, is that it also is then requiring more work on all of your ends, right? Like now it's another email that you have to answer. And then probably 5 more emails are going to follow after that. So it's just more things that then you need to also be tracking. Whereas this can all just sort of happen automatically behind the scenes and it doesn't require any more lifting on your part. And then Mary had a comment in the chat that just said, asking if someone could speak to the risk, including worst case scenarios, about sharing two decimal places. And then Joy had just said that that fact generally was fine about it, even, though that they have clear water that we don't have.
Right. Yeah, and I think yeah, there certainly have been, certain locations or types of locations that are, might be sensitive that people are or if they've had problems in the past with receivers being removed or other things. So there certainly are some potential issues that some projects may have, and I think you know, I think you know, there's always, you know, I think, and I'll just answer Mike's question in the same sentence. You know, I think that, you know, I wanted to have some discussion around people's thoughts around sort of opting out or opting in, and whether this was of interest to pursue at all. You know, I think, you know, I think there is a fair bit of interest in this, and so, you know, we'll work on crafting some potential language that could be added to the user agreement with approval of the network. Work with John on sort of the details of how we might have opt-in and opt-out options set up, and then put that out to the network in a poll in the coming weeks, and move forward based on the feedback that we get from all of you. We don't want to just make a decision today because we have a lot of people, but certainly not everyone. But I want to find the best solution going forwards. You know, for all of us and to support the projects that have interest in or are required to you know, to put their data in archives and other things like that. So yeah, my intention was not to like immediately shift to 100% mandatory. That wasn't the intention of this conversation, but was to have the chance to talk a little bit about what the opportunity is and what the options are that we'll be able to present you soon. And then we can kind of pull the network and see what direction we want to go with the new user agreement.